May Day has just passed, and for those that aren't familiar with May Day, it is May 1st. It is a far-left holiday. It's not officially a holiday for us in the traditional sense, but for far leftists, they go around protesting and rioting, and I love this story from Fox News. May Day protest, 14 arrested in Seattle after peaceful protest gives way to clashes. Police said at least one bystander was pelted by eggs on the street. Fox News playing that peaceful protest game. My friends, have you realized it yet? You've lost. We've lost. I've lost. You've lost. Sure. I don't think there's ever a time where in the world of politics, it's just done. Like there won't be resistance and there won't be pushback, because there is. But sorry, everybody. If you're of the principled classical liberal variety, in terms of like, you know, the original ideas of the founding fathers and life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, you're on the outs. The mainstream media, including conservatives, don't really support you. The police do not support you for the most part. Many cops are quitting. We're seeing police shortages across the country because cops want to, many of them, support the Constitution for which they have sworn an oath. And then there are a lot of people who just don't care and just want money. And if you are on this side, the best thing you have going for you in terms of fighting back is the milquetoast McConnell Republican Party. That's right. What does Mitch McConnell ever do? Nothing. Obstructs. The Republican Party doesn't fight for anything, and that's why people voted for Trump. Now, of course, there's going to be riots over May Day. I like how Fox News even calls it a peaceful protest, but I'm sorry, I have the definition of riot, and they say a violent disturbance of the peace. I'm pretty sure if a bystander is hit with eggs, you've graduated to riot. But they're like, but it's 93% peaceful. Dude, if there's a large group of people and they're marching peacefully, I'm all about it. The moment people use that as cover to engage in violence, and the people marching peacefully say, we must respect the diversity of tactics, as they do almost every single time, you are aiding and abetting. Okay? Now, I'm not going to blame the legitimate peaceful protesters for the actions of the violent people, but that means if you are peaceful, you must stop those who are being violent. They don't do that. I've been down to these events. We've seen it. Ask any one of the journalists. They say, these peaceful protesters say, respect the diversity of tactics. Right. So you're going to a bank because you want money. And the people who show up with you are violent and robbing that bank. And you're like, well, we're all going to form a big crowd, which effectively provides cover for the people robbing the bank. We're not going to take any responsibility for allowing this to happen, for encouraging people to come out and demand money from the bank. We weren't violent. It was them. But we do respect their diversity of tactics. Yeah, if you do that, you're going to get arrested too. But let me show you where we're at. I don't care all that much for May Day, protest, riot, whatever you want to call it, because it's predictable. It doesn't stand out, right? It's not like, you know, we've got these police shooting instances. What's happening with the police departments is the cops who are not on the woke train are being driven out, and they're being arrested and charged whenever they can be. And I do think many cops should leave, and they should leave sooner rather than later, simply because if you wait, they will slowly erode the core of the department, replacing good cops with zealot cops or just bad cops. They want the woke cult, the extremists. Now, you got the useful idiot Antifa types. They don't know what they want. But the smarter organizers, they want drone-like cops. They don't want cops who won't have none of this, all right? So one of the complaints they say is like, these cops, they just don't care. They're not paying attention. It's inhuman. No, that's not true, right? We saw this in the video in California where they were restraining a woman, and one of the cops goes to punch the woman. The other cop grabs him and stops him. That's not like it never happens. But they want you to believe that all cops are zombie drones. Now, don't get me wrong. There are a lot of cops who are zombie drones. I've met many who are, and I've met many who aren't. They got to get rid of free-thinking cops. They got to get rid of cops who are like, I can't do that. I got a constitution, of which I think they are now becoming few and far between. Replace them with cops who are like, I don't care about the Constitution. Just give me money. That's what they say. So let me show you this. Welcome to the woke corporate takeover. Michael Tracy tweets, inspiring corporate-sponsored art now adorning the Target in Minneapolis that was looted last year. I love this art Michael Tracy posted because it looks like It looks like the building's on fire. Look at this. What is this art right here? I can't tell you. I don't know what it's supposed to be. To me, it looks kind of like shelves on fire or buildings on fire and people staring at it with their fists up and it says, I can't breathe. Is this a burning building? I mean, there's a person, is it a person wearing a mask? This might just be a woman in a hijab wearing a mask. And these people, I don't know. Is it supposed to be people in like niqab or hijab? They're wearing bodysuits. Look, their fists are covered. I don't know what that is. But it does look like a burning building. Maybe it's not. Maybe it's not the intention. But it certainly seems like the corporations, the woke corporations, are fully on board and supporting this. So I hear from a lot of people, they say, back the blue, baby. Say, back the blue. Got to defend those cops. All right, let me show you some stuff. This is what you get. First of all, let me say this. If you're a conservative and you live in suburban or rural areas, why are you defending police? I understand. I think most people who are defending the cops don't realize that cops in big Democratic urban metros are not the same as your suburban cops or your rural sheriff's department. AOC even said this. To her credit, she said, we want urban policing to look like suburban policing. And I'm like, okay, sure. I lived in the suburbs at the time. I had a great local police department. They were a police department. They serviced this area, mainly just my town. But they work with the other departments in and around these suburban small towns, and they were great. Absolutely, I never had an issue with them. It was remarkably different from living in Chicago, where the cops just don't care about you and treat you like trash. And Chicago's got serious cop problems, but these cops are fantastic. Now I'm out in the middle of nowhere. We don't even have a police department. I think we have we have a sheriff's department. We have like almost no services, so you got to take care of yourself. And out here, no issues. You're responsible for yourself. What ends up happening, in my opinion, is these conservatives equate the sheriff's department and like local police departments in suburbs with big city urban metros. That's a bad idea. You need to understand the cops who live in these areas may lean conservative for obvious reasons, but they're still big city, blue, Democrat voting, urban, metro people. Don't defend them. If the left wants to complain about stop and frisk in New York, you don't live there. I guess if you're a conservative in New York City, you can be like, hey, I leave the cops alone. Sure, whatever. But how many conservatives really live in New York City? It's like 20% maybe. So I get it. There's a lot. But maybe you shouldn't be living there paying all of these taxes into this system that you know is corrupt and empowering more corrupt people at the federal level. I bring you now to a tweet from Andy No. Andy says, breaking. Far left protesters follow a man who is brandishing a bat in downtown Portland. One says he will slit the man's throat and mutilate him. Antifa protester Amanda Sieb in a wheelchair urges people to back off. Police arrest the man who complies. I don't know much about this video. I can't show it because YouTube will probably take the video down if I do. But you can find it on Andy No's Twitter at Mr. Andy No. In the video, there's a man and he's wearing some kind of tactical vest. I don't know if it's a bulletproof vest. He's got a baseball bat and gloves, and he's backing away, warning people to stay away from him. Okay, maybe he instigated something earlier on. No idea. In this video, based on what I see, he's backing away, warning people who are advancing on him. One guy's holding something that many people said is a machete. I don't know if it is. It might be a baton. Either way, this man is retreating while others back towards him. Eventually, they back up and there's a police vehicle. The police get out and yell, drop the bat. One cop draws his gun. Dude drops the bat, gets on his knees, puts his hands on his head, immediately complies with the cops. The cops then apologize, and I don't mean literally in the sense like, I'm so sorry, like they're apologetic to the Antifa people advancing on this guy. There's the woman with her dog in a wheelchair. The guy goes, the cop, he goes, I'm sorry, could you just keep your puppy out of the road? I just don't want your puppy getting hurt. Thank you so much. Deferential to the extremists. Is that a surprise to anybody? Now, I don't know who this guy is. Maybe he's a nut job. Maybe he's a crazy person. Sure. My issue is if I see two people, one guy's backing up and one guy's advancing, or a group of people, my immediate assumption is not that the guy backing away is the perpetrator of some crime. However, if there is a concern that there's a guy walking around with a baseball bat, which you're not supposed to do in these cities, which I also think is kind of dumb, wouldn't you arrest the guy with the baton as well? Now, perhaps the cop didn't see the guy with the baton. Maybe the guy with the baton backed away and hit it once he realized there were cops there. Hey, Therein lies still the deeper problem of this. These cops will arrest the conservative and not the far left. We saw it in Portland before when a bunch of conservatives are protesting. These cops are probably not on your side. I find it hilarious that these people think they can go out yelling back the blue and supporting cops when they don't live in these big cities, not realizing these cops, many of them do live in the cities, or often if they can't afford to, in the surrounding suburbs, which tend to be more blue, probably are Biden supporters, probably are Democrats, probably aren't Antifa, but are absolutely not going to arrest the Antifa people when this guy, when you can see this guy. It's a sad story. I tell you this. And it's the propaganda, the manipulation. It runs deep. Andy No tweeted, the Minneapolis Target store that was looted and burned during last year's BLM riots now displays a mural that celebrates arson. I don't know if I would go that far to say that, simply because I don't know what the art is, but it certainly appears to be that Andy is correct. Jesse Lane, I have no idea this is a real person, whatever, it's Twitter, tweeted, the mural does not celebrate arson. They're trying to appease the community to calm down so their store will be left alone in the event of future mayhem. That's not celebrating arson. They're not condoning it. What? Have you guys seen that really funny photo where it's like a Whole Foods and it says like racism is not welcome here and all the windows are smashed out? Here's what happens. These stores get looted and burned. The police do nothing, retreat, protect only government buildings, or even arrest those who want to stop it. If in the event they do arrest the arsonists, many of them are just released by the DAs because the whole thing's political, because the DA is a political position. Then these businesses say the only thing we can do is just give the extremists what they want because there's no real resistance. So they do. They put up these messages and start telling the community the riots are good. We like the fire. The fire's great. And they put up these murals. Meanwhile, the cops, the good ones who swear off the Constitution, they quit. And what's left are cops who are like, don't know, don't care, don't want problems, give me money. And that's what we're getting more and more of. So at a certain point, many conservatives need to realize the police department they think of in their minds, maybe going back 10 years, maybe the nice cops they think they remember, they're gone. That's not happening anymore. What's going to happen now is you're going to have two groups, right and left, and they're going to say, we know who the media is going to side with. We know who the DA is going to side with. Just arrest the right. We don't care. And they'll arrest you. It'll be very easy because the media will demonize you and frame everything in the most insane ways possible. Then when this starts seeping into school and there's some semblance of pushback, the media will jump out with the most beautiful propaganda. Look, if Gordon Ramsay was doing one of his kitchen nightmares, but it was for media instead, he was in a newsroom and he was making fake news. Okay. Really terrible analogy, by the way. He would just be gushing in one of his rare gushes over the beauty that is this propaganda. Oh, I just got to say, I am so impressed by this. Reuters reports, I say reports that way because Republicans ask Biden to withdraw divisive proposal to teach more Black history. You heard that. Wow, when I saw this article, I gotta say, I am impressed with Reuters. They talk about the most insane fake news you could ever see, just punching you over and over in the face. Republicans ask Biden to withdraw divisive proposal to teach more Black history, as if to imply Republicans are upset about Black history. Now, I tell you, when you get Milquetoast McConnell, who can't do anything, and he just sits there like the most pathetic leadership ever. Well, slow down there, Democrats. That's all he really does. What are they really doing? Okay, all right. Let me show you. McConnell and Republicans say Biden administration embrace of the 1619 project needs to stop divisive nonsense. Oh. The Republicans are saying that the Biden administration's push to include the fake news 1619 project into school curriculums is divisive nonsense. And so Reuters calls it Black history. The decoupling is happening. The decoupling is happening. You want to call it a peaceful divorce? I don't care what you call it. Maybe it started with California and their sanctuary cities and sanctuary state. They said outright, we will not abide by federal law. Y'all can shove off. What ends up happening is that California can then bring in illegal immigrants, promising them they won't be deported and giving them benefits like healthcare. This then adds people to the census, which gives them more congressional seats, more power at the federal government, and it gives them more electoral votes. So whether or not the illegal immigrants actually do vote, California holds more power federally because of illegal immigrants. Following this, we see the expansion of Second Amendment sanctuaries. Many counties across the country, namely in blue states, places like Virginia, declare themselves to be Second Amendment sanctuaries, and they will not allow law enforcement to abide by state law or even federal law when it comes to banning guns. We've even seen, and I think it's Ohio, where they said they won't cooperate with the ATF. And I think West Virginia, Wyoming, and many other states are starting to do this. Many states are starting to say to the federal government, y'all can go F yourself, which brings me to Lubbock, Texas. And this is just an aside. I'll get back to the other story. Lubbock, Texas voters okay abortion ban and declaring city a sanctuary for the unborn. The decoupling is happening. Mitch McConnell is weak and pathetic. The federal government is an absurdity, has become a group of silly people that don't represent the states. And it's probably because of the disproportionate amount of power that states like California get because of the things they do and because of the system in place. The only outcome I think that we'll end up seeing is collapse of some sort. Because West Virginia ain't going to agree with California, and West Virginia's not going to sit around while California policy takes away their rights. It makes no sense. Look, if someone lives in California and San Francisco or LA or San Diego doesn't want guns, I get it. Make your arguments. But if somebody who lives in West Virginia, wants guns, why should someone who lives in a big city tell West Virginia they can't do that? You see? So where do we go? Well, let me talk to you about the 1619 Project, and just to give you a better understanding, because they're not talking about Black history. On the 1619 Project Wikipedia, they say the World Socialist website, not conservative, published a series of interviews with prominent historians critical of the 1619 Project. They say in December 2019, a letter published in the New York Times by several historians expressed strong reservations with the project. In December, it just goes on and on and on. In January 2020, historian Dr. Susan Parker specializes in study of the colonial United States, noted that slavery existed before any of the 13 colonies. She wrote an editorial. We get it. The 1619 Project is fake news. It's been corrected. There's been, major changes. So Republicans aren't saying don't teach Black history, but Reuters is infected by the cult. That's just how it is. The cult is now in the CIA, as per this viral video where a cultist is like, I'm intersectional. Intersectional just being code word for cultist. And I say cultist because you really need to understand this is not meant to be an insult. It's meant to be taken literally. The woke have a dogma. They follow what are effectively preachers, priests of their ideology. There's no real rules, right? So I look back at the 90s and 2000s when you would have many of the moral authoritarian Christian right saying things about the Bible and what the Bible says or doesn't say. And then you'd get points on the left where they're like, what about Leviticus? What about these rules that you disregard? And sure enough, I've never received a particularly good answer. I've been given answers and I say, okay, fine. If you believe that, whatever. But I feel it to be particularly contradictory to say some things don't apply and some things do. But I guess it's fair to point out many Christians say the New Testament kind of supersedes whatever. The point is, there are a bunch of wacky things that people don't abide by from multiple religions. And then you look at the woke dogma, and there's no real rules to follow other than bend your knee to the mob and do as you're told. Like Womixen. Yeah, WOMXN is offensive and not offensive, and it's both simultaneously offensive or not. It's just about whether or not at the time the cult decides they will use it for power. Stop Asian hate, for instance. Well, when the woke mob decided they could use this to gain power, they did. And previously, they had been insulting Asians as white people. So you see, there's no real rules to that system. It's just an orthodoxy. Actually, it's not orthodoxy, not even fair. There's no real orthodoxy to it. It's just a cult. It's you are in or you are out. You abide by the rules or you don't. You follow us or else. And that's why apostates are more dangerous than non-believers. Because somebody who is a part of it and then leaves, that's a problem. So they try to demonize anybody who might be, Black, maybe woke at some point, and then switches. They say, oh, they became alt-right, or they try and smear them because they don't want people from within coming out. It is basically a non-theistic religion. Now, there's some positive news. From the Daily Mail, anti-woke candidates opposed to critical race theory being taught in Dallas school win control of affluent district board with nearly 70% of the vote during bitterly contested election. It's not like there's no resistance. There is. It's just there's no real mainstream resistance. The police departments across the country in these major urban metros will bend over backwards to brutally beat a conservative given, at any moment's notice. And the far left is gaining political control. They've gained political control in Minneapolis. They're gaining it in Seattle and Portland. And the cops that remain, in my opinion, are probably just crooked cops. I know there's a lot. I've had a lot of messages from cops where they're like, but I love my job. I don't want to leave. Are you working in New York, Chicago, LA, Portland, Seattle? Look, those cops are crooked. You know how I know? We just saw a video of cops not caring, being deferential to Antifa. And again, I don't know what that guy did. Okay, so maybe they knew about something. Sure, fine. Maybe I'm wrong about that video. But we also know over 200 officers left the Seattle Police Department. Those cops probably had scruples. They didn't like the feeling they got deep down servicing corrupt politicians and arresting people who aren't doing anything wrong, maybe because they want to sell a hot dog during the COVID. But these protesters are allowed to defy all of the rules. It's about time you realized the Republicans are offering up no resistance. Mitch McConnell gets elected again and again and again. And so long as you have those roadblocks, there will never be real resistance and they will keep gaining power. Mitch McConnell serves as a roadblock to make sure that no one stands in the way of the Democrats. Lindsey Graham, very much the same. These are two guys who occupy space and get the politically uninitiated conservative types to just vote for them because better than Democrat, they say. And then what they do is they stand there arms crossed saying, you can't go any further. And behind them, you see Democrats just smashing things. And you're like, what are you doing? Why are you blocking me? And they say, don't worry, we'll take care of it. And they don't do anything. Meanwhile, it just gets worse every day. At this pace, resistance or not, within the next 2 or 3 years, we are going to be living in a wokeocracy, a leftist identitarian government where race is the predeterminant for how you get access to services and what you can do and where you can go. And we're almost entirely there. With the COVID lockdowns and all the rules around masks and everything, we now see what countries are doing. In Canada, for instance, they prioritize minorities, or I shouldn't say minorities, it's non-whites. That's the, in the U.S., they tried doing it as well. And I think in Vermont, they actually proposed this. So where do you think this goes? The woke cult has gained enough power in government that the feckless and spineless conservatives won't do anything about. Now, I'm not talking about you as a conservative because you're watching a video of this. I'm talking about Republican government where they're not really Republicans. They're rhinos. They claim to be conservatives. So maybe it's fair to say the faux conservatives. They're in government and they're just being a roadblock to regular Americans who are saying no to this. Now, look, I'm all for a Star Trek future with a unified one planet world, like one planet government, one world government, whatever you want to call it. But what you need to be concerned about is if it's an authoritarian cult government where the ultra elites are allowed to do whatever they want, say whatever they want, and you don't. In Star Trek, that's not the case. They do have a one world government after a couple hundred years of strife and chaos and world war. In this, it's a classically liberal future. They still have military hierarchy and people still have beachfront properties, but it's inevitable that we form these international ties and come to these agreements. The problem is those that are implementing it now are doing so in such a way that it would give the ultra elites power, creating a oligarchic system where regular people aren't allowed life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. That's where we're headed. More like the Borg than the Federation. And so if you're a fan of Star Trek as much as I am, then you would probably want to say no to the assimilation of the Borg and yes to the classical liberalism and the freedom and life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness of the Federation. I suppose, though, you still have many people who are going to go into the voting booth and they're going to see Republican and they're going to stamp it down. And the only thing we can really do, I suppose, is just keep speaking about it and hope that people learn about what's happening and they see what's happening. Because at this point, seeing the police support the rioters, as we have several times now, it's a turning point. It is. I'll leave it there. Next segment's coming up at 1 p.m. on this channel, and I'll see you all then.